All right, so far, this is how we've built up our image. We have a blank white layer. Right on top of that, we have our flat color layer, and this is filled with flat local color. Everything's just filled in with one solid pixel color. Then we have on top of that some dark shadow shapes that are cut out with the lasso tool. So you can see, like in animation or in cell shading, how that edge feels like it's just cut directly from it. And then on top of that, so this is duotone cut edge or hard edge color. Then on top of that, we have black line art. And this is a perfectly fine finish. You know, we might be happy with this. And we can keep going in and cutting highlights away from our duotone layer. I want to actually lock my flat color layer because that should not change. Right. So like where the nose is catching light here, you can just reduce it. Oh, wrong layer. And you see the white here, that's because there's no flat color there. So how can I add flat color there? Well, this is a good instance where I can just use the paintbrush. And I'll pick something a little crazy so you can see it. At 100% opacity, a little bit bigger. I'm just, instead of using the magic wand or the paint bucket to try to get all those little enclosed shapes, I'm just going to use my paintbrush and paint it in. Because remember, you can always do that as well. But the problem with the paintbrush, of course, is you can go over your lines, color outside the lines. So I much prefer using the paint bucket to fill in big areas that are contained when possible. Whoops. So I'm doing this on the flat color layer, and that will allow me to mess with it on subsequent layers. It's just not cooperating with me. Just gonna do it this way. Draw the shape with the lasso and then fill it with my foreground color. That green is a little eerie and interesting. So what I'll do is, because it's not on my duotone, I'm going to select it, turning contiguous off. So we'll select all those greens, duplicate it onto its own layer, and then merge that with my duotone layer, but make it darker. So before I merge it, go to Image Adjustments, just like I did with my flat color copy, push the midtones darker. Okay, and then select those two. It's important to keep them organized. And so I have my duotone layers here. Then I have my flat color underneath. Now, what's another option for duotone? So I can call this my duotone shadows, right? Or my duotone dark. I can make another duplicate of my flat color and call this my duotone light. Because that's what duotone is, splitting things into a dark value and a light value. And then I just go to Image Adjustments, Levels, and instead of moving the midtones to the right to darken them, I move them to the left to up their contrast a little bit. And that gives a little bit more roundedness. So notice, true duotone color is different than the flat local color. The highlights are lighter, the shadows are darker. But the average between them goes back to that local tone. Now, that's my duotone, but these are both, I'm going to put them in a folder. These are both soft edge duotone, or hard edge duotone, or cut edge. Now I have those duotone variations in this folder. Now if I duplicate this folder, I'm going to create soft edged variations, so you can see the difference. Why is it not letting me? Okay, so how do I make it soft edge duotone? Pretty simple. Remember Gaussian blur? I'm simply going to take the hard edge duotone here, the shadows, and I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. All of these tools we use multiple ways when we're doing digital coloring. And I'm going to keep the same, low radius blurring. Oh, that was too much. So it seems like you have to kind of type in the amount you want, because the preview is very slow in Photopea. So I'm going to do about a 6 pixel blur. Come on. Chop, chop. All right, so when it's slow like this, reminds me I need to save my work. Okay, so that's a blur. So notice how different that is than the hard edge, right? And there might be some surfaces where I want it to be more hard-edged and some surfaces where I want it to be softer. Like I might want stronger highlights out of the metal. Just doing this kind of randomly, but yeah, I'll mess with that later. All right. So next, what's my next step? The next variation I can play with if I want, making another duplicate and then changing it to what's called full spectrum. You always want to do your flat colors first, but full spectrum is now where I can take all that color and maybe do like a rainbow gradient over it. This is an example. Something that goes warm to cool. This will be nice. And of course I can customize that gradient and make it the exact colors I want. Take the opacity way down, right? But just so it mixes. So now you see that there's like blue and green on the blade. And so it mixes multiple colors into the local color. And then the blend mode, I can play with maybe dissolve. Gonna break it up a little bit. Say okay. No, I don't like the dissolve. Turn that off. I love using these layer styles because they're so versatile. Give you so many options. Yeah, it's pretty nice. So that's a full spectrum. And then the last little thing before you guys take off today. This is a fancier sandwich, right? You've got the black line art on top. You've got not just Velveeta cheese now, a flat color inside, but you've got pickles and different types of condiments and meat and cheese. You've got a full sandwich. But if you want to make it super fancy, we all know what an expensive sandwich has. It has a little toothpick and an olive on top. So in order to do the last special effects, we want to go on top of our top piece of bread and put in a new blank layer that we call a color hold. This is the olive on a toothpick on top. And this is where I might want to put something that goes on top of the black lines. So for instance, I might want to paint in a little light blue glint to the metal, where it's catching the light near the point. So I paint a little star. And I'm painting with a hard-edged brush. Okay, but then of course I can always gouge and blur it and bring everything together. And now you can see that that little glint is on top of my black line art, and it's affecting it. So that's called a color hold, because it's where the printer has to hold out color. If I want it bolder, I can duplicate it because I gouge and blurred it, and then I can merge them together. So these are all options for your coloring. That'll be stronger and stronger. Then I can take that same one and I can add that glint other places. I can duplicate it and add a glint to the metal. And of course use my compositing skills, adjust the hue. And lighten it a little. Then maybe even take its opacity down. So we have all these options. For how to play with our color, endless options. And as long as we started with an outline, whoops, too strong. As long as we started with an outline that we're coloring mostly behind, except the color holds are going on top, then that is the discipline of digital coloring, from flat color to duotone to full spectrum. All right, to submit this assignment by midnight tonight, you want to save your full colored version. Not just as a PSD, but as an online file format. And for this part of the project, I'd like you to save it just with the white background, so you can save it as a JPEG. So export as a JPEG. With the next assignment, we'll work on putting offsets around it and putting a background behind it and text with it so it works well as a poster. And that's what we'll be doing in assignment 8. Making a poster out of this by adding text and a background and customizing the text. And we're going to learn more ways we can play with the coloring as well. I'm going to move these together. So that's my olive on top. And now this is the fun part. There's so much more I can do to play with it. But this will meet all the requirements. You're going to submit your sketch to Canvas, just your line art alone. So to do that, I would turn off everything except for the white layer and the black line art and save that. And then both of those can go in Canvas along with your sketch. And you've shown me digital coloring of a spot illustration. All right. Good job, guys.